When I was little, I always wanted junk food. Why? Because they were always advertised to me by, by all these big company names after my cartoons. I'll be watching SpongeBob, and I don't know where you get a McDonald's cartoon, you get a candy cartoon. What I'm trying to say is that food preferences were always decided by me by these big food companies advertising to me after my favorite shows. I can even say now as an adult, I'm still being influenced by these unhealthy food companies through their advertising. Now imagine children all over America being told what to eat and to only eat unhealthy food. That's where the problem should start concerning people so we get ended. A quote from Limit on Marketing says unhealthy food and food brands that are relentlessly marketed to children can influence their food preferences for a lifetime. End quote. We as adults should stop these big name food companies from controlling what children should eat in America. The influence and power these unhealthy food companies have over here in children is scary, and we need to stop or limit it. Now, the problem being, of course, these unhealthy food companies and their advertisements to children. We're also going to be talking about the many solutions we can limit or completely put a stop to these unhealthy food companies. Then lastly, we're going to talk about the many, and I mean many benefits we will get as Americans from from stopping these advertisements. Now let's take a look at what a bigger problem these unhealthy food advertisements are to children. The huge influence unhealthy food companies have on children is horrifying. It is horrifying. With the social media being ever growing and not stopping, these children are constantly being brainwashed by these companies through advertisements. They target these kids through TV, any social media apps, celebrities, cartoon characters, games, etc., putting these kids in danger for their health in the future and now. These advertisements greatly affect children's health in the long run, since all they want is junk food being advertised by these companies. A quote from the Impact of Food says approximately 20% of our youth are now overweight, with obesity rates in preschool ages increasing at an alarming speed. End quote. These children are at risk for so many health problems. Some of these health problems are listed by the CDC, and quote states that all causes of death, high blood pressure, high LDL cholesterol, low HDL cholesterol, coronary heart disease, arthritis, breathing problems, mental illness, body and pain, difficult with physical function, and etc. And quote, that's a lot of health problems for being unhealthy. And imagine these kids having to deal with that because of these advertisements. That's insane. The main targets are young children who are introduced to any source of media at such a young age, being advertised all these unhealthy foods by big corporations who are taking advantage of them. A quote from Emma says that globally, 1/3 of the internet users are children, and they're online for an average of 15 hours per week, typically through a portable device such as an iPad, laptops, or smartphone, end quote, giving us a greater insight of why children are the main target. TV or YouTube are the great places for these advertisers to be. A quote from Diablo says companies can brainwash children to buy their products by showing them the same commercials repeatedly during the children's programming. The more the children is exposed to the product, the more the children will want it and nag their parents to buy it, end quote. An example of this is for Coca-Cola. I quote Coca-Cola from their video, Open That Coca-Cola, where they have Tyler, the Creator, a huge rapper. Who doesn't know who Tyler, the Creator is? Rapping about Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola is pretty much known not to be really healthy. So, of course, kids are not going to know that. Kids are going to see Tyler, the Creator, and they're going to be like, oh, it's Tyler, the Creator. I'm going to want a Coca-Cola. So they're just going to buy it, not thinking of the, how foods they're going to be put at. That's another way these big companies do to, target children by putting celebrities like that, promoting their food. The American Heart Association has mentioned that companies have no limit to the money they can spend on these ads. A report from the American Heart says, I quote, a report from the FTC revealed that the industry used $100.8 billion for these marketing and advertising foods and beverages to children in 2009, and quote. Now that we see a huge problem these advertisers are, let's talk about the solutions we can finally put a stop to this or limit them. Children can be safe from these unhealthy food advertisements if we limit or totally get rid of them. A great mini solution is the limit of media children should take. Take away the iPad, take away the phone, take away the, the TV. Limit them, have them go outside so they're not constantly exposed to this. A quote from Lindsay Smith says, reducing children's exposure to food marketing is an important obesity prevention strategy. And quote, the less junk food they see, the less junk food they want. It's simple. The child should see less advertisements for unhealthy food, and that's when the parent can start doing their job instead of the iPad, the TV, the tablet, the games. A quote from Bookman says, iPads are not parents, end quote. We could also start restricting the advertisements, in places like schools, children clubs, sport clubs, any where young children are constantly gathering, we should start restricting those unhealthy foods. A quote from Healthy Foods states another example, like more examples, restricting the marketing of healthier options, in places like schools, food and convenience stores, fast foods, and other restaurants, giving us, end quote, giving us another, examples where we shouldn't have these unhealthy foods at. We could also start being politically active, no certain laws, supporting protests, supporting certain groups. There are laws and rules these advertisements have to follow. The food companies have to obey. These rules, if they want to advertise to children, a quote from Marketing and Advertising says that the rules take into how to obey, the rules take into consideration and the inexperience and cruelty of children, as well as the social and cultural values of society, end quote. Another quote from the NFC. The NFC calls for a halt to advertising via all venues of this age group and safety measures to ensure this misleading marketing messages are not shaping our children's values and financial behavior, end quote. Now, let's take a look at the benefits to these solutions I just mentioned, right? By implementing my solutions, we can start seeing healthier children and less unhealthy foods that can harm them. If we don't, we'll start seeing more obesity, more health problems skyrocket in America. And we'll still be seeing these companies doing that, advertising all these foods to kids. If there are zero unhealthy foods advertisements, there are zero health problems in America. One of the most important benefits that come from a solution is healthier children in America. The faster we get rid of these unhealthy food advertisements, the easier it'll be for children to be easier. Also, there'll be less junk food for children to want. Like I said, less advertisements on unhealthy food, and the less kids will want it. Equaling more healthy kids. It's that simple. No more letting companies influence children anymore. Anyway, with the limit or total stop of unhealthy food advertisements, we'll see companies have less power over these kids, finding and letting them think for themselves and not letting some big company decide what they want to eat. Also, it'll be easier for kids to spot what an unhealthy advertisement is when they're not being constantly bombarded by them. A quote from Raising Children says that the ability to stop advertising helps, is an important life skill for a child in the long run, and quote. We have talked about how much of a hazard unhealthy food is, and the many solutions we have to either limit or completely stop, and the many benefits we'll get for implementing my solutions. People need to stop these big food companies. I cannot say this enough. The influence and power these unhealthy food companies have is terrifying, and we need to limit or completely make a stop of it before it is too late. A quote from Your Number One Priority states that keeping children healthy and safe should be the top priority for all child care providers, end quote. Hopefully, you'll leave here today motivated as much as I am to do something about this problem, because it is a pandemic. And if we don't do something to stop it, it's not going to stop, and it's going to spread all over the world and get worse. So thank you guys for listening, and see you again next time. Bye. Where's that? There.